Joining me now with more insight on the West Bloomfield Lakers' opening victory is our Laker football color commentator, Matt Catoni, with us on the Splash Live. Matt, good to have you on with us after a victory for the West Bloomfield Lakers to open the season.
Yep, thank you for having me, Tyler. And yep, really couldn't have gone any better than last night.
Yeah, 37-0. That's following up a year ago where the Lakers defeated Clinton Township Chippewa Valley 42-0 at home to open the season. Quite an emphatic start to 2025 for the Lakers, and a lot for Coach Hilbers and company to be happy with as they look back on week number one. I think chief among all of that was the performance of a very young offensive core that only returned 4 starters this season.
Yeah, we mentioned on the broadcast just how they were going to have to overcome or just really find a way to replace the production they lost, especially from the best wide receiver in the program's history in Elijah Durham. And last night we kind of got a glimpse at how they're going to do that, focusing a lot more on the playmakers that they have on the ground with Will Espy, Obi Duru, and Jamal Shakespeare really thriving with the ball in their hands last night.
Yeah, and Davis also getting some touches. Joel Davis, one of the primary running backs late in the game, especially those power rushes. He ended up getting quite a lot of action in the second half. Kind of in that power rush game, which we haven't seen for the Lakers in a few years. The last time they really had a running back like Joel Davis that they held in their arsenal and used quite often was Malik Mathieu years and years ago, just before and leading into the 2020 state championship game. So now they got a little bit of versatility. They've seen kind of what Ken Rise has to offer, the offensive coordinator with this particular squad in 2025. But Matt, the command at the quarterback position leading this team was also something that stood out on night number one. Jackson Carver taking the majority of the reps, looking very poised. And then Jamal Shakespeare had a rock-solid night as well, leading the charge.
Yeah, I was really impressed with the poise that Jackson Carver was able to show in his first game at the varsity level. And that was really the best part about the defense's performance. It allowed Carver to be relaxed and just kind of let the game come to him and not have to force anything. And Jamal Shakespeare looked as good as ever last night in the backfield. And that's something that's going to be an underrated aspect of this football team, having him to rely on if things can't get going on offense.
Yeah, one of the top 5 rushers on the Lakers team in 2024, and the only of those top 5 to return to the team in 2025. Obi Duru just on the outside looking in for that. And so playmakers making plays on the West Bloomfield offensive side too. And that's pretty good considering the matchup at the line was going to be something on paper that looked like a problem with such a big defensive front for the Fords and Tractors. You would think this younger offensive line was going to have some struggles. But, Matt, outside of a few discipline issues here and there, some procedure penalties, some illegal shifts, by and large, they had their way with that Dearborn Fords and D-line.
Yeah, and it was really just the best part of the game was the physicality on both sides of the ball. But on offense, they were moving the offensive line was moving the defensive line, and they were able to maintain the edge and just get to the edge, which is something that is crucial for the Lakers offense, as we've seen in years past, is getting these playmakers out in space along the boundary and seeing them just take off for touchdowns.
Offense always jumps off the page. It's always what gets the headlines, especially after a 37-0 victory that puts everybody on notice as you start the season. Even the D-Zone last night that had West Bloomfield ranked at number 31 coming into the season, saying West Bloomfield definitely showed that for a team that's typically been ranked preseason in the top 10 in years past, and this is one of those rare times in the last 5 to 10 years that hasn't happened, maybe some of those pollsters got this wrong. But while the offense will jump off the page, the defensive performance, you can't overlook that. They put out a shutout against a Fordson team that's kind of matching them in terms of their veteran presence and their young talent presence on paper. They had a great performance. It started off mostly in the trenches, but Matt, the most impressive, mind you, element of that Lakers defense on night number one was the secondary.
Yeah, the veteran leadership is mainly in that secondary. You got Khalik Robinson, Espy, and Shakespeare all kind of getting action in the secondary, and a lot of talent on Fordson's offense with Amidala and Reeves at receiver. And the Lakers secondary was just locked down. It was very reminiscent of your no-fly zone Spartans, and just how the defense was able to come out and They like to say that every team has a plan on offense until they get hit in the mouth. Last night, they just repeatedly kept on hitting Fordson in the mouth and throwing them off their game.
Yeah, pretty impressive, too, when you have someone like Will Espy, who's been in your secondary for a few years, and he had a relatively quiet night defensively. Did a lot of good things, kept the ball away ultimately from his man in that hat-on-hat matchup. But it was guys like Khalik Robinson, Jamal Shakespeare also having an impressive night. Robinson, Christian Banks also stepping up, one of the newer defensive backs stepping into a starting role in 2025. They made a lot of plays, and they made plays when it counted, Matt. What the Lakers did really well was once they started to see a strength emerge for the Tractors, they adjusted very quickly, especially that defensive side. Really shows the veteran presence that is there, leading the charge, communicating, and something that I talked with Will Espy and others about earlier on this week as I was preparing to call that game. And he said that's really what is the big difference maker with this particular veteran defense. They've been playing together for so long. They know how to communicate well with each other. And on top of that, they're building those relationships and have worked really hard on the chemistry with the younger players. And as you go into a tough schedule ahead, next week against Southfield A&T, not quite as tough of a matchup on paper, another program that's sort of going into a rebuild and turning a new page in their history, a couple of years removed from a championship. But after that, it's challenge after challenge after challenge, and arguably sort of rises up in how difficult it's going to be all throughout the rest of the season. So that chemistry being established early on could be a huge benefit for West Bloomfield in this season.
Yeah, and really what I think is going to help them out a lot on the defensive side of the ball is their defensive ends. They have two just absolute, almost, you could say, unicorns at defensive end, because you rarely see two defensive ends with the blend of size and athleticism that they have, with Jeremiah Benson being 6'4", and then Isaiah Gray being 6'5". They're able to affect passes even when they're not getting to the passer just by putting up their hands and affecting some of these throws.
And they have other players, too, that shift into those edge positions and are able to be versatile players as well. They got so much talent on that defensive end core. Joel Evans also plays a lot of that. Also, you see a little bit of Travis Robertson. We saw some Jamar Ray in there, who ended up coming up with one of the fumble recoveries for West Bloomfield last night. That's what's huge, is they're so stacked on the defensive side, and particularly in the trenches in the OAA Red Division with such talented offensive lines for a lot of these opponents and really, really talented quarterbacks like Alex Wazenko for Clarkston, Jack Hendricks for Oxford, and of course Rhino Waters from Rochester Adams, who we'll see at Lakers Stadium in a couple of weeks. The Lakers being able to attack the quarterback is going to be a major difference maker come OAA Red Division play.
Yeah, we've seen just last year how important trench play is. And this year, just based on last night, it looks like they're going to be very intent on getting to spots and moving guys off their spots. And one of those guys that just absolutely thrived last night was Joel Davis, and he just looked phenomenal in both the run game as a fullback and running back at times, and on the defensive side of the ball.
What jumped off the page mostly for me last night for the Lakers was it didn't seem like anything really phased them. They got a bit of the penalty bug in a few different spots throughout the game, especially early on. It kind of crept back later on in the game as they had that commanding lead, and that expanded beyond 21, beyond 28, up to 35 points, that discipline sort of took a little bit of a back seat. But every time they ran into those issues, they'd find an answer. When Fordson was able to get the ball in the hands of Dean Hamoud and he'd make a couple of plays, pretty soon the Lakers would put a bigger focus on Hamoud. They'd shut him down. Then they'd get their running game going in the trenches. The Lakers would readjust. They'd take care of that without dropping the ball on some of those other problems that may have popped up earlier on. That's a huge difference maker from last season to this season that I observed. Matt, from your point of view, what do you believe are some of the biggest changes that are going to be a benefit to this Lakers squad come the rest of this season?
Yeah, I think the offense just appears to be more versatile in knowing what it wants to do. Last year, we kind of had that period where they didn't necessarily know what direction they were going with the offense. They couldn't necessarily get the passing game going like they wanted to. But this year, they kind of seem like they know how they can come at you in so many different ways with the weapons they have at their disposal. And like you mentioned, the short-term memory on defense, they gave up some of those big plays, but almost immediately responded with big plays of their own. Dean Hamoud got them inside the 10-yard line, and from there on, the Lakers defense only pushed them backwards.
Yeah, and so far in the OAA Red Division, the Lakers having a good start to their season. They picked up a win. A couple of their other biggest opponents picking up wins as well. Rochester Adams won last night, defeating Romeo, and then also Clarkston, a huge win in Detroit at the Amazon Prep Kickoff Classic at Wayne State, as they defeated Belleville in a routing of their own. Lake Orion taking a close loss at the Prep Kickoff Classic to Northville 14-13, and then we're going to see the results come Friday night. In Friday night's game, we'll know the result pretty soon about Oxford playing at home against Heartland. It's going to be a really tough division. Every one of these teams has had their early season test, and so far for those top three in the division after week number 1, it looks like they're all ready to make a big run. So as we look toward OAA football season, beginning with a crossover in week number 2, and then we get into the Red Division with a couple crossovers along the way with Birmingham Groves and Bloomfield Hills High Schools, respectively. The Lakers have a chance to be in the mix, and Matt, after last season where it quite literally came down to the final plays to decide Oxford as the Red Division champions, it looks like once again it's going to be up for grabs in the OAA this season.
Yeah, and you mentioned last year it coming down to just the final place, and that's the best way to summarize the Lakers' past 2 seasons. They've been right on the cusp of achieving such tremendous things and reaching these feats. The seniors seem to be very hungry and know what they have to do to get to those heights that they just barely missed out on these past 2 years.
37-0 victory for West Bloomfield to open up the regular season on a Thursday night. Here on out, throughout the fall, it is Friday night football alongside Matt Catoni. I'll be broadcasting each one of these games right here on Civic Center TV. Matt, thank you as always for your time.
Yep, thank you for having me.